There we are.
All
We're
right.
on.
We are live. So what do you guys all think about the case for this week?
I didn't like it.
I didn't like it either. It really left me kind of hanging at the end.
Yeah.
So I thought our Doohickeys case was more clear cut.
Yeah.
The doohickey case.
Yeah.
There was a lot
Yes.
that needed to be done this week, but
It's funny because I run it, not like sexual harassment, like that in a company, but I run into that all the time, with people that reporting crimes, but they don't want to. Oh my God, I don't want to do anything and whatever else, especially that kind of sort of stuff, sexual rape stuff and whatever else, and it's kind of difficult sometimes because you got to talk them into it, but and say, look, this can happen to other people and blah blah blah. So anyway.
yeah, no, that's way true. I don't know. This stuff always really scares me because I feel like people never want to admit that it happened or like cause problems, and so they just try to ignore it. And I don't know. I had a roommate one time where she had some problems like that happened to her, and she wouldn't tell her parents because it was a family member that had done it, and she wouldn't tell her parents. And I'm like, you need to, because you're putting even other people at risk by not telling the correct people about stuff like that happens. But anyway, so for the case, the first thing that it says to do is to basically define what sexual harassment is. So does anybody want to share what they think would be a good definition of what sexual harassment is?
There's a pretty good definition on the EEOC website that makes a definition where they talk about two different kinds of pro quo and then the hostile work environment. But basically, it's anything that has to do with gender that makes people harassed so that they can't do their job, or that they're tied to performing for some kind of a promotion or keeping on the job or other things relating to their work and promotion.
Yeah, does anybody, I think that was pretty good. Something that was new to me is, I guess it makes sense, but it's like anything to do with gender is sexual harassment, because I always thought it was more just like basically anything inappropriate was sexual harassment, but I guess gender falls under that too, and that was something that I learned through this case and through studying this stuff.
You mind if I share something?
No, go ahead.
Okay. My brother was fired for this, and all he did was tell a joke, and the person who told the joke thought it was funny, and it wasn't even a sexual joke, but someone else heard it and didn't like it, and he got fired. So, I mean, you've got to be careful with just about anything you say.
You really do. That's crazy.
You do. I had, assuming nobody got necessarily fired, but there was an investigation. This is several years ago, just because it was a captain, and basically he just told the law enforcement, they call them law enforcement leads, but they're the secretaries. Anyway, he just told her she looked nice that day, or her dress looked nice, and that was it. And then she filed a complaint. There was this big investigation over it. So it taught me when I was quite younger then, and it taught me not to say anything about anybody, how they look, what their clothes are like, anything. I just don't even say nothing. So
good morning, and that's it, right?
Yep. That was it. And it wasn't, the captain was fine. I think he kind of retired over it in the end, but anyway. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah, one thing that stood out to me, because on one hand, it seems like it can be kind of maybe not overly strict, but like you said, you have to be like super careful. But then again, I looked at the beginning of that document where it talks about the definition of sexual harassment. And I'm kind of glad it's gotten a little stricter because it talks about like cases in the beginning where the women were basically powerless, you know. And
Yeah.
I read that and I'm like, man, I can't believe that could happen in a workplace, but I guess it could, and it still can, you know. But it was crazy how it was kind of just like, what did they say in that one? It was like in one of the earlier cases or whatever that I can't find it, but it was like, no, it wasn't sexual discrimination. It was just like he had urges or whatever, and then it was like thrown out. I was like, oh, that's crazy.
Right.
Yeah. So the reason why I chose to do the sexual harassment part of our doohickeys paper was that we just completed our sexual harassment training at work, so we have to do it every year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so do we.
Yeah, us too.
What did you learn in your training that would help us define what sexual harassment is, like more specifically? If you
For
don't
me,
mind
I mean,
sharing.
no, they go through a list of they give you examples such as saying someone looks good, like Shane was mentioning, could be construed, but if it's more often and more prevalent, then it escalates and becomes more of a problem. Mostly though, they talk about who to report to, how to report. They talk about how you can report at work to a supervisor, or you can go above your supervisor. You can do it in an email, or you can do it anonymously. You can talk to the company's HR person, or you can go directly to the EOCC without even going to the company. Then they also talk about how it could be, male to male, female to female. It can be a bystander, and they give examples of each of those. They define what quid pro quo is. I can't even say that. But,
I can't pronounce it either. Something. So moving on, so moving on. In Martinez's story, does her situation constitute sexual harassment?
Yes.
That's fine. Yeah.
I mean, without.
Is that the Lone Star case?
Yeah, the Lone Star case.
Yeah.
Mark, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's tough because, the one guy, he just overheard something, and it's tough to really understand when you overhear something what could be going on. So, but, at the same time, if something is going on and he doesn't say anything about it, he could be held liable for it, and the company could be held liable for it. So, him actually bringing it up, was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. So, Mark, do in your guys' training, do they mention that to observe it, you need to report it as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If anything like that comes down. Yep.
I don't know. I think it's really good that they have this, but sometimes I think people are too particular about it. It's kind of like Shane's example. Like somebody at his work, was it you or somebody at your work where they told somebody they looked nice that day?
It was someone at my work.
At their work. And
someone else. Yeah.
Did they end up getting fired for that, or they just got in trouble for it?
They got in trouble. There was an internal investigation and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what some people just take it. Sorry, 1 second. I feel like some people just, I don't know, like make a big deal out of things that are small. But I guess we don't also know the whole story, so maybe there's more stuff that goes on. But
Well, and it's one of those things. There's this, and it's bad because there was a couple. She was one of them, and there was another one that, I mean, it was well known amongst the office that you just did not talk to them because they would take whatever you said or anything, and they would file a complaint. And so you just, I mean, it's bad because you just wouldn't talk to them. You know, you couldn't have a normal conversation with them because you're always on guard compared to other people that you could talk to. So, you know, like you said, people take it, I think, too far. And, you know, and then it, I don't know, it causes problems for them, really, in my opinion. But
yeah,
I think in this case with Martinez, there's two sides to every story. But, you know, in this case, I mean, that's, if what she says is true, I mean, that's going to be clear sexual harassment. And so, you know, in the actual case, then I think that's a good example of what it could be.
yeah. Do you guys think that in this case it was the, I'm going to try to say it, the quid pro quo, or is it just
Quid pro
hostile
quo.
environment?
We don't know if it was quid pro quo or not, because we only know what she's saying. She never really mentioned a favor or, you know, a sexual performance for keeping a job or improvement. So we don't know that. It may be, but we don't know.
It didn't sound like the case because she was looking to voluntarily take a transfer. You know, I mean, there was nothing that said, hey, you're going to get fired or I'm going to do this if you don't, you know what I mean? But we don't know. You know, like you said, for sure, we don't know the whole story. So
Yeah.
I think I'd put in a more hostile work environment that it seems like she can establish a pattern of stuff that's going on.
She said it was escalating, you know, it was getting
Yeah.
worse.
Right.
Yeah, that's, I don't think there is, can you guys see me or do you just see a T?
We don't.
We just,
I got a green tea here.
yeah, we just see two Tiffany's. There we
Okay.
go.
You are.
Now we see you.
Okay, good. I just noticed that.
Oh, there-
Okay, sorry. But yeah, that's what, I don't think there's enough information for us to be able to say it's a quid pro quo. But I would definitely say it sounds like it's a hostile work environment if what she's saying is accurate. But going on that, do you think, we'll ask Roland if it's okay, Roland. Do you think that DaCosta got accurate advice when he called the council's office?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to kind of recap, the advice he got was to basically report it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sound like they had recommended that he take care of anything himself or necessarily get super involved, but just to report it and then to have an investigation go on. And it was good advice. Was it accurate? Probably. I can see a company wanting to be very assertive in, you know, taking care of problems like that because it can lead to huge issues or huge lawsuits.
I thought it was interesting in this case that he is a manager himself and he didn't know the process, which was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because it seems like he shouldn't have had to call those lawyers. He should have just known, you know, the process and what he had to do. There was no question as to what he had to do. So I thought
never
that was,
thought of it that way. That's a good point.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I
obviously,
think it also depends. Well, I think it also depends too because you know, like I'm a manager and I know, you know, that I have to contact HR, you know, and then they give me the legal advice, you know, of what I can say, what we can do, what's going to be, how we're going to move forward with this. So it might have been something along those realms where, you know, maybe, you know, because they said lawyer, like the person that they were talking to said something about how like we could get nailed because it looks like we've ignored the problem, we've condoned it. So it sounded like whoever he was talking to was working for the company.
mhm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Well, she told him to go to the Lone Star office for reporting this kind of stuff. And I know where I work on our training, and it's on some posters too, that you don't have to just report it at your workplace. You can also go directly to a government agency like the state,
Yeah,
or to the federal.
yeah, I agree with, I think it's Shane who mentioned it earlier, that it doesn't seem like they really have any procedures for when this kind of things happened. It seems almost like, what's his name, DaCosta, may have almost just heard it and kind of panicked, and so he hurried and called the lawyers to ask the lawyers what he should do, when maybe he should have reached out to HR or somebody else. Not saying that he shouldn't have called the lawyers, but I feel like if you call a lawyer, they will always say to be completely thorough, or somebody representing HR and the people might have given him some advice on how to approach Martinez or somebody about the situation and find out more before taking such a drastic measure as to call the lawyers.
So, but he called the lawyer first. The lawyer told him to go to the company EEO office. Yeah, it's the EEO office, and that may be company policy. They may have a company policy that he just wasn't aware of. That's what you do. But
Yeah.
he needed to be aware that he could go beyond that and go to either the state or federal government.
Yeah, he could have.
I think that was an office in their own company, right? That they told him to contact.
Yeah, exactly.
So that must have been like
And it may
that must
be-
have been like in their HR department or something. But
Yeah.
But I think Tiffany's right. I agree with Tiffany that if he knew in the first place the procedure, then he could have just called them in the first place, and then they could have handled everything. He wouldn't have had to come in, have her come into the office, and have that conversation or anything. They could have handled it, and they would have the training to do it.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, it even says right here, like, he knowing what company procedures or even legal issues might be involved. So there, even at a management level, might be a need for additional training to the management team, so they know how to, if anything like this arises, that they know how to, who to reach out to.
yeah.
But it also explained in the beginning of the case that they were merging with another company, so that can bring confusion as well when you're not knowing how another company does things. So.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Why do you think the lawyers representing the company might have insisted on doing the formal investigation?
Because their job is to look after the company and the liability of the company. And so the only way to prevent that is to do that investigation. So,
yeah, these are not for the employees.
right.
So they represent the employee, not the employees, but the company's best interests. So minimize whatever damage there is.
Yeah.
And Julia, this might not be just happening to Julia. It might be happening to other people. So if they start an investigation, they might open up a whole other can of worms about other people that he's doing the same thing to.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. The lawyers, I feel like, are there specifically for the company, like Keith and Shane were saying. And I also think, though, that's why he should have maybe gone to an HR person, because the HR people are there for the people and the lawyers are kind of there to protect the company. Not that they're not trying to protect everybody, but their main focus is the company.
I'd caution in thinking about that, though, because HR managers are actually there for the companies. They're there for the employee, but they are still also there to cover company assets.
Yeah. All right. Does anybody have anything else to add to that part? If not, we can move on to part 2. We're good?
Yep.
I'm good with moving on.
Okay. All right. So how would you evaluate Jack DaCosta's options at this point? And what do you think he should do?
Hmm.
I don't think he has any real options. I mean, he should be honest with what's her name? Is it Martinez? What is her name? I mean, he should be honest with her because really what the lawyers told him, and he doesn't have a choice. He has to call and report it, and he should just be honest with her. You know, it's I'll give you an example. I had a kid in a class that exposed his penis to a bunch of other people in the class, and you know, the one kid that came in to write a statement for us, you know, he was all concerned. He didn't want to go to court. He didn't want this and everything else. And the assistant principal said, "Oh, this isn't going to go to court. Don't worry about it. No one will ever know, you know, that you wrote a statement." And obviously, I do stuff from the criminal side. And you know, after he left, I had to tell the assistant principal, "Don't ever tell them that, you know, make a promise that they're not going to go to court or nobody's going to know." You know, because that's not going to happen. Just be upfront, be honest, you know. So she said, "Well, I'm going to keep my mouth shut now." And so I had to talk to the rest of the kids. And, you know, but I tell kids, them, look, you know, at some point your name's going to come out. And, you know, and this could very possibly go to court. Can't promise it is or isn't, but it could. And, you know, then they're comfortable with it. They know up front what's going on. And I think with her, that's the same thing. He knows what he has to do. He was told what he has to do. So he has to do it. He should just be honest with her about it. And, you know, but that's where I think Tiffany was right with the HR, because if he contacted HR, then they could have just handled that. But anyway.
Yeah. So who thinks that he should have reported it? And do any of you guys think that he should have done nothing? Shane, you think he should have reported it, right?
Yeah, I mean, he should report. He doesn't have a choice if he doesn't want to get sued. You know.
What about?
I'm not hearing you, guys.
Do you think he should report it or do nothing?
Oh.
I'll answer.
I can't hear anybody right at the moment.
Oh, we can't.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Roland.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, that definitely I agree with Shane. He has to report it. Whether he should have gone to the lawyers with HR, in the end, it's got to be reported anyway. Like the lawyer on the phone said, like, where he gets to testify in court, and they asked, "So did you know about this ahead of time? How long has it been going on?" And he's got to testify under oath that he knew, you know, and how's he going to feel then? Not just, you know, but himself, that he knew that things were going on, and then they potentially got worse, and he did nothing to stop it when he could have, you know. Definitely he should report it.
Yeah. Mark, what about you?
Oh, absolutely. He has an obligation as a manager to report it. I mean, anybody who works for a company and overhears that stuff, regardless of their level, has an obligation to report it.
So, you know, one thing that the lady said, which was Julia, she said, "It's my problem, not anyone else's, but it's the whole company's problem."
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, because if she didn't want the company involved, she should have talked on the phone somewhere else, you know, not right there in the office with her sister, you know. I mean, there's no, you know, she doesn't know who's around. So.
Yeah. All right, Roland, so can you explain, what would you tell Julia about your decision to report it?
I don't know. That's the thing about this case. It's actually a really good example of how awkward it can be, you know, or how difficult, you know, because Julia doesn't want to be the one who makes a fuss and, like, is the example made of sexual harassment at the company. And Jake Costa doesn't want to be that either. But what I'd probably tell her, I mean, especially if he's in a leadership position there, which I think he is, right? He's a manager. I think what I tell her is just, hey, you know, you might think that this is just your problem, but like Shane was saying, it is the company's problem. Like, 'cause who's to say if you get transferred, it doesn't start happening to someone else? And I might talk to her about the idea, you know, would you like to know that because we didn't take care of it now, that it went even farther with other people, you know, or the mess got even bigger and nastier, you know, in the future, when this person should have been taken care of, or the issue should have been taken care of. So I think I kind of go that direction in my conversation with her and just let her know you know, it sucks that you have to be involved, and I don't want to be involved either. But it has to be taken care of, because if we don't do it, who will, you know, and will it be even worse in the future?
Yeah, and she had said that, you know, it was escalating. So, you know,
Yeah.
who knows where the end of that escalation would be, even if it wasn't with her. Maybe it, you know, if she got transferred and someone else came along, you know, there could be another issue there. So there's a safety factor for everybody involved.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you know, just in my job, you wind up with that a lot. And it's kind of nice. Like, you could use, for me, like, you can use a lot of times. You can tell somebody, look, I don't have a choice. This is just my job. This is what the law says. I have to do it. And most people understand that, you know. So, like, you know, if I have to take somebody in for an involuntary mental evaluation or something, I mean, they don't want to go, and they can be a problem and really start getting angry and fight and everything. But when you start explaining to them that, look, this is just the procedure, this has to happen, you don't have a choice, I don't have a choice, you know, this is what's going to happen. And then, you know, they understand that, and then you go from there to, look, there's things in place, there's people there that are going to help you, and they're going to help you in this situation, you know. And then you just kind of I guess comfort them, or give them some assurances that there's going to be people there to help them. And you know, you just have to do that all the time, whether it's that sort of thing or child abuse or anything. You know, most kids don't want to tell their parents either. You know, they're afraid of what's going to happen, and that's just what you got to tell them. You know, but most people understand. You know, they'll take the truth, and they understand the truth, and they accept it. You know, and once they get past that, then you can go from there. But they have to get past that and just understand, hey, this is what has to happen. So,
Yeah.
So Julia has a concern that she's going to get fired if this investigation goes forward. What are you guys going to tell her about that?
there's laws against retaliation and that she cannot be fired. So, I mean, she just needs that assurance that she can't be fired. You know, there's laws against it.
But what proof does she have?
That's what I was going to ask. In this case, does she have to provide a lot of concrete evidence, or will they kind of naturally side with her claim, even if she doesn't have a lot of concrete? I'm curious to know.
It doesn't really
Well, you know-
matter, does it? Whether she can prove it or not. I mean, if she makes a claim, she makes a claim. You can't be retaliated against for that, whether she can prove it or not. You know what I mean? So you can't be retaliated against just for making this claim. Whether it gets proven in the end or not is a different matter, you know. But she's definitely protected. I mean, they can't do anything to her. So
I feel like it would come down to it being his word, whoever is
She can't be
harassing her.
making the accusation.
mhm.
Yeah, so she can't be fired for making the accusation, but couldn't her boss fire her for some other reason?
Well, that'd be retaliation. You know, she's going to be able to trace it back to that. I mean,
How could they prove that?
you would just the circumstances, you know. I mean, you would look at it and say, okay, on March 20th, I made this allegation, and now April 30th, I'm getting fired. You know what I mean? You're going to be able to say there's a relationship there. Or I started getting a bunch of bad employee performances where everything was really good before this. You know what I mean? You're going to be able to get that circumstantial evidence and have that relationship. So, or what we would call the nexus I guess. But you could cheat. You could prove that. That wouldn't be hard.
So what exactly would you guys report to the EEO office?
I guess just get her side of the story, and I don't know, would it be wise to talk to, what's his name, Rob French or whatever? Talk to him first, or would you just report it on her word alone? Like, that'd be good enough, wouldn't it? So just kind of give her side of the story and report that and then have them investigate, right?
Yeah. I'd get it out of my hands as soon as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not my job to take care of it, right?
Yeah.
My job to report it, but not to take care of it.
Yeah. You have a responsibility to report it, but that's it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
All right, so we think we should report it. All right.
I don't think you have a choice.
Legally, I think you have to report it.
Yeah.
All right. Would anybody want to say anything else about that part, or we can move on to part
Good.
3? All right, part 3. So I feel like we kind of talked about it earlier, that there are some, or there could possibly be some confusion on what the company's sexual harassment policy is. And so we're supposed to each take some time to think about, so we'll each be assigned a topic basically, and then we're going to discuss what the sexual harassment policy should be for that bullet point. So, Keith, would you take potential? Wait, what?
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay. Can you take potential victim of harassment and
Sure.
what?
Yeah, I can do that.
And what you're going to do is come up with a short summary of what the doohickey, or this isn't doohickey, or what the company policy should be for a potential victim of harassment.
Okay.
And then Shane, will you do a legal counselor and what the sexual harassment policy should be for legal counselors and the action they should take for that? And Roland, do you want to do the bystander? And Mark, will you do the accused harasser?
Yeah.
And then we can just each take, and then I will do the accused harasser too with you, Mark, because there's only 4 of them. And we'll just take 5 minutes and just individually think about what you think the policies should be if this kind of thing comes up for your assigned person. So
I guess as the victim,
yeah.
I would want to know how to report it. I want who to report to. I would want to know the definition and with some examples so I know if it was harassment against me. And I would want to know that it could be confidential. That my peers wouldn't necessarily need to know about it.
Yeah. I think that's good. So it needs to be confidential. That seemed to be a big one because you don't want peers or anybody to know about it. What your rights are, how you.
I think the biggest thing for the victim, because a lot of these things are going to be the same, but from the victim's standpoint, they need to know how to report.
Yeah, how to report.
Uh-huh.
How do you think they should report? So if you were writing the policy, how would you say they should report this?
You see, it could change because you don't know who's doing the harassing. A lot of people say you've got to report to your supervisor, but if your supervisor is the harasser, then you wouldn't want to report to that person. They already know they're harassing, or So you should be able to go to their supervisor, or you should go to an HR, or be able to go to a government agency. And that should be spelled out in a policy, and everyone be aware how they can, the many ways they can report.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. All right. Oh, we just left. Not left. We just lost Keith.
I'm still.
Oh, you're
He's
back?
there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good. All right.
So legal wise, I think there should be policies in place that the legal team, one, has some of these legal documents in place, that they're prepared, not that like he called the legal people and she kind of acted like he was stupid and he should know what to do. But I think that they have some responsibility to train people on what the legalities of all this is and to let people know. Obviously, you have the sexual harassment posters with all the legal stuff up. Make sure that they're there in every place in the company, that you get from the EEOC. A clear, review the policies that are made and make sure that they meet legal definitions and meet everything for people of what to do. In this particular case, I think that legal should have, they have an obligation, I think, themselves, instead of putting it back on DeCosta's plate. I think once they knew about it, I think they had a responsibility to do something. If they're protecting the company, then either they had a responsibility to do something or they had a responsibility to follow up with it and, to make sure that something was done. But for the most part, I think, for legal, they got to make sure that the legal documents are there, make sure that there's the posters up, make sure that they are meeting all the EEOC guidelines, all of that legal stuff. So that's, I think, their position in this. So make sure the company is following all those things.
Yeah, that sounds good. So they need to basically have procedures they need to follow up and they need to kind of give help. So once it's reported to them, they have responsibility then to make sure something is done about it.
Right. But before any of that happens, they have responsibility that all of this stuff should have been in place anyways, that they're meeting those EEOC guidelines, because all of these things should have been posted. There should have been a policy in place. Everybody should have known the policy, and I think they have a responsibility to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I think they do too.
Wouldn't it be better if everyone lived like Elder Christofferson talked about, where gentlemen would never do that. Now we have, because gentlemen, there are no more gentlemen, or are fewer gentlemen. Now we have to have rules in place to protect us where people protected each other before.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. All right, who's the accused harasser? That's Mark and I, correct? Mark, what do you think for the accused harasser?
So, obviously, if it's the accused harasser, there's going to be an investigation that takes place. And normally, from the things that I've observed throughout my management career, if somebody goes down this path or whatever, they're usually placed on job restriction, meaning like, they can't come to work and they can't do anything until the investigation is, done. So, he would have to know, if when an investigation starts, he may be placed on, the word's escaping me right now, where he can't come to work.
Like
What's that
on
called?
leave?
Exactly,
Probation.
exactly. Mandatory leave.
Suspension?
Suspension, thank you. That's the word. Yeah, he might be placed on suspension until they, figure it out. And, there might be a case where he might not come back to work. So, this actually happened to me where I had an employee who was using one of my work emails, and she was sending, out, very, sexually explicit things to somebody using the work email. We found out about it, and because she was the accused harasser, we placed her on leave and placed her on suspension. And when the investigation was done, when she came in, we essentially terminated her right there. So she never came back. So I think you got to kind of spell that out to them and let them know, hey, this is the path we might go down. You are going to be placed on suspension, and pending whatever happens in this investigation, you may be terminated.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the only thing I would add to what you've said is it needs to be kept as confidential as possible. Because if you're accused
Right.
of something like that and you haven't done it, and then the whole office building thinks that you've been harassing somebody and it gets out to other offices, maybe if you're doing like a corporate job and you want to transfer, it'd be hard for you to get a job. So it needs to be kept very confidential of why you are on leave. Or
Right.
suspended.
Right. And naturally everybody's going to be asking questions, hey, why is so and so out? Why is this? And you got to really tread lightly there.
Yeah. All right, Roland, the bystander.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts I had. First of all, I think holding good trainings that help people to recognize sexual harassment when they see it, being able to recognize when something crosses the line, obviously. And then also, I think empowering them with ways to be able to report it to the right people. I think sometimes you might be afraid of, like, in this case, for example, I don't want to get involved, but I do want to let somebody know. I don't want to be seen as the person who caused all these problems. So I think confidentiality, maybe even anonymity with someone reported to the HR office. But again, just outlining all the tools to be able to report, is really what it comes down to. And again, like I said, being able to identify is going to be probably the most vital aspect of that.
Yeah, I agree. So you think that the protocol should basically be, if you see something with perhaps in the protocol or policy, there's exact description of what, like if you see somebody that's doing this or this, report it to your HR director.
Yeah, I think so. The problem is, obviously, you can go over examples and situations like in a training meeting of this is exactly what sexual harassment looks like, but sometimes it might take forms that you might not have thought of before, or might not have been covered in training. So really trying to help employees or bystanders be confident enough to report anything that just doesn't feel right, where they don't know. But you shouldn't necessarily have to be like, well, I'm 100% sure that was, so then I'll report it. Like, even if it just seems weird or feels wrong, go talk to the HR department about it. And I think maybe that's where some of the confidentiality comes into place, because you don't want to necessarily, if it was nothing, you don't want to be afraid that you might get caught up in it or called out or something,
Yeah.
Problem with the bystanders is you still have to work with these people.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have to be careful with that.
Yeah, I feel like the bystander is the hardest one, because you're just kind of that middleman that has to, like, like you guys have said, you work with both of the people. I don't know. I feel like it'd be bad to be a bystander.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like in this case, right? And it makes it that's what makes it hard, is because he's like, well, it's not my job, maybe, or my place, maybe, to have to take care of this, but it is. If you see something going on, it is your place. It just can get kind of awkward, I guess.
Yeah, that's what the main character, I keep forgetting his name, De
DaCosta.
Costa.
Yeah.
He's that bystander where he has one person begging him not to do anything about it, just asking him, please just let me take care of it. And then the harasser guy is one of his good friends who he eats lunch with.
Yeah.
And he needs to pretend like it's nothing in front of people to keep it all confidential. I don't know. I think that would be really hard to do.
Yeah. Definitely.
All right. Well, should we find out what happened after all of this and what he decided to do and how it all ended?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll just read it. What happened, and it says, when Jack called corporate counsel, he forgot about caller ID. The lawyer used the information he gave her to figure out the people he was talking about. She contacted the Lone Star EEO, which launched a formal investigation. The EEO tried hard to get Martinez to cooperate. French denied all charges, claiming that Martinez had made up her story to protect herself from pending layoffs. De Costa was asked for evidence, but he didn't have any. Julia Martinez's husband found out what was going on, beat up Julia, and forced her to quit. French survived the investigation with only a bruised reputation. He blamed everything on De Costa for calling corporate counsel. There was so much animosity between De Costa and French that De Costa left the company after 3 months.
Oh man.
So,
Happy ending.
yeah, very happy ending.
Yeah. You know what? Julia Martinez's husband beat her up.
Yeah, so her husband beat her.
He beat the wrong person. He should have beat the guy that did the crime.
I know, when I read that, I was like, I think that's backwards.
Yeah, he should have
That's
gone
what
and
she
beat
was-
it French.
She had kind of said that the whole time, right? Like, do not let him find out because he has a temper and all this stuff. Like, so she knew it was coming, which is why she was so adamant about it.
She may have been more afraid of her husband than she was of the process of the
Yeah.
investigation.
I think so.
That's what I think too. After I read that, I think she was most scared of what her husband would do to her. And so that's why she was so willing to just put up with the harassment that she was receiving.
Yeah.
So now that you hear the end, do you still what do you think Jake should have done? Do you still think it was handled the best way?
He had to report. I don't think he had a choice but to report. But I think he should have known the policies and got the EO office and just stated exactly what he found or what he overheard, and then let them do the investigation. And he should have told Julia, "I will be doing this. I have no choice."
Yes, I think he should have told that to Julia, and then perhaps she could have told her husband in a way, I don't know how he found out, it doesn't say, but if he would have told her, she could have prepared him, and it might not have ended that way if he would have just said, I have to do this.
But culturally, I mean, you don't know their relationship, and no matter what she did, he may have felt that she caused the issue, that she was doing something to encourage French to do these things. And, so just the jealousy and stuff, there just might not have been anything you could do about that. So some of it goes back, I think, onto her shoulders. I agree with Keith with everything. He had to report it and all that sort of stuff. But obviously some of it goes back onto her shoulders. She knew what her husband was like. She could have cooperated in the investigation. Obviously there's protection orders and there's all kinds of stuff that could happen if she cooperated. went through with stuff, and some of that could have been prevented. So I don't want to say, you never want to blame a victim, but there's certain things that they could do to protect themselves. And I'm sure that the EEO office and anybody else was there to tell her of all these things that could take place. And it's up to them whether they want to do it or not.
Yeah, I agree. At first, when I heard this outcome, I was thinking that's stupid. Like, why would they give us like a bad ending? Because wouldn't that deter us from wanting to report things? The more I think about it, I kind of started thinking about it from Julia's standpoint. So if you're a victim, I think the lesson here is if you are a victim of something, don't try to hide it, because it just makes everything worse. Like, whatever short-term negative consequences you might think there are, I think always being open and honest about what's going on, things will end up right in the end. I mean, the biggest reason why this kind of turned into such a big mess is because she denied it.
Right.
She denied what was
Right.
true.
Great point.
Right.
One thing that's interesting is that, Costa, he has to do the right thing, and we don't always get a happy ending. All you can control, because you don't know what the ending's going to be before. So all you can do is just do the right thing right now, and then hope things turn out for the best.
Yeah. Like he has a
Integrity
and yeah.
Outcomes, even if we do the very best.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that he should have reported it. And I agree, if she would have cooperated, she could have got the protection she needed from her husband, from police, to get that protection too. And she may have solved two problems at once, getting rid of the sexual harassment and an abusive husband.
That's true. That's true.
Well, and there's not always a happy ending to these stories either. What I was talking about earlier with the employee that I had about who was emailing the sexual stuff, that was to some. She was actually married, and this was to another person. So there were a whole bunch of ramifications that came from this, right? Like, she was married with kids. She had to go home and face the music to her husband. There could have been a possible divorce there. I don't know what happened, obviously after she was terminated, but, moral of the story is, sometimes these don't always end up the way that we think that they should end up, or how they should end up.
Yeah, that's true. It's real life, and that's what this case, it has it in parentheses that this is a real case, but the company and the people have been disguised. So this is something that really happened.
I'll just share something really quick, and I won't tell you the whole story, obviously, because it could be longer, but it's something that I just dealt with recently, and it's probably the hardest thing I've dealt with over my whole career, but it dealt with a couple of sisters that have been raped for many years by their stepfather, and they had told their mom didn't believe them when they're like 13, and now they're like 17, 18 years old. Mom didn't believe when they're 13. She wasn't married to the guy. Right after they reported it, a week later, she flew to Hawaii and married the guy. And anyway, it went on for a long time. And the younger girl, she told some people, and finally she got this boyfriend who her dad is a cop. His dad is a cop. And so he knew, they're talking about it. He reported to his dad. His dad understood, hey, you got to say something. So that's how I got involved, because then he's reporting it to me and whatever else. And so anyway, we did this report, and we got these girls to write statement. They wrote the statements. They're all up front and everything else, and dealing with their mom who didn't believe them. Stepdad got arrested, and, and you put everybody in place, like the sexual assault nurses, the victim witness protection people, and all these things, CPS, all these stuff for these girls and for the family. And it was just sad in the end, because their mom completely didn't believe them, wouldn't help them. And then in the end, their stepdad wound up driving into the bay with his truck and shooting himself in the head. And so, you know, and it's something that, you know, you deal with. And I obviously see the girls at school, and you just think, I mean, you feel so bad for them, you know, and you know, you think, okay, we got them to do this stuff and report it. You know, in some ways they didn't want to, you know, and you tell them, you know, everything will be okay. And we got these people for you, and you'll, you know, whatever, you know, and you want to get them out of that situation. But I mean, that's something that, you know, you just have to deal with. Things just don't happen good all the time, you know, and now these girls are with their mom. And anyway, the little brother, he got taken away. He lives in Montana with his mom and whatever else. So it's kind of a whole sad situation, but now you deal with it later, that you wonder, could we done something different? Could there have been another way and whatever else? But, you know, it is what it is. So, you know, that's just another example of just real life, and that's what sometimes you have to deal with.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is. I think you just hit it right on the nose. It's real life. It doesn't always end how we want it. And just because one problem was solved by, you know, maybe, well, he got away with it, but, you know, just because one problem solved, it doesn't mean that by solving that one problem, it didn't have a domino effect.
One good thing could have come out of it, though.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
if French did this again and someone else reports it, at least their EEOs, or whatever they are, their company has investigated him once before, and that would add credence to the next person that may have a problem with this guy.
Yeah, that's very true. So just to wrap up this part, it says, what was Lone Star's sexual harassment policy? And as far as I know, they didn't really have one that I really grasped, besides to report it to the EEO. Did anybody else catch anything that may have been a policy?
it seems like they had a policy, but people didn't know that there was a policy. You know, I mean, the regular people didn't know what the policy was, but there obviously was some sort of policy in place, just they didn't train people.
You know, in the my portion of the doohickey paper, there's a statement in there, and I put a direct quote in there. There was a company in New Jersey that was sued. I think it was the penal system. A captain was abusing somebody, and they said that yeah, they had a policy, and but that didn't protect them because it didn't follow through. It was just lip service without the training.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the next few questions is like, if they had a policy, did Jack know anything about it? And I would think no, he didn't know a lot about it. Besides maybe that he had to report it, or that he needed to tell somebody. And then it basically just says, what policy, procedures, or training might have improved the situation Jack found himself in?
He didn't know how to report. He needed to know how to report the thing.
Yeah, he needed to know how. I think that was the big thing, is to know how and to whom to report. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. Then it just says, ask each team member what the most important thing they learned from this case. So, Keith, what's the most important thing that you learned from this case?
Integrity. Report if you're a bystander, and you know, just stick by your guns, no matter what the outcome.
All right, Mark.
No, I would have to agree with that. That, you know, if you work for a company and you have something that comes out that comes up like this, you know, you have an obligation to report it, and even though it might not be a happy ending, it's still something that has to be done.
All right. Yeah, I would agree with that. Roland?
Yeah, similar thoughts. Just having the courage to just do what's right, you know. People make bad choices through the process, then that's on them. But you can know that you have a clear conscience because you did what was right.
Yeah. Shane?
Just in the light of saying something different. But I agree with all that. That's the biggest thing. But I just think the importance of training, you know, that companies that, you know, you have to provide this training for people and to provide means of reporting that people know how they can report. But I think that's the biggest one is that just knowing what to do. They need to be trained.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those. I'm gonna jump on the train with everybody. The most important thing that I think I learned from this case is just basically just doing what needs to be done. Even to know she didn't want him to report it, it was still the right thing to do. And so I would say that is what I learned that was most important from this case. And then it just says, ask each team member to rate the overall quality of today's discussion from 0 to 10. So we can do this quickly. Keith?
I give us a 9.
A 9? Awesome. Mark?
Yep, I do a 9.
10.
That's 10. All right.
All right.
Roland?
I'd say 9 as well.
Awesome. Shane?
I'll say 9 because nobody's perfect, but I thought it was a good discussion.
This is like Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, I would give it a 9 because I just say no one's ever perfect. So. All right, and then just to finish, what did your discussion leader do that you liked, and what could we do better next time, or what could I do better next time? Keith?
Well, you did well. You called on us when we were quiet. I like that. For me, it was some technology issues, you know, just getting things to work. But that's the only thing I can think of. Just we did that well. You called on us, and got each of us to respond. That was great.
Thank you.
I really can't think of what we could do better.
I agree. I agree with Keith. I think you did a really good job keeping the conversation going and calling on people, and everybody had a chance to say what they wanted to say and participate. So I thought that was really good. Yeah, what we could do different, I don't know. I think it was good.
Thank you, guys.
So how was our paper coming, Tiffany?
It's coming really good. Let me turn off the recording so that when they watch this, they don't have to watch us talk about the paper.